The autumn wind whipped through downtown Chicago as I pushed open the heavy glass door of Morrison and Associates Fine Jewelry. The familiar chime announced my arrival, but today it felt different. Today, my sister Victoria was with me, her perfectly manicured fingers already pointing at the most expensive pieces in the display cases. "Oh my God, look at this one!" she squealed, pressing her face against the glass. $25,000 for a tennis bracelet. Can you imagine? I could imagine. In fact, I had been imagining it for months. Every night after my double shifts at the diner, every weekend when I picked up extra hours cleaning offices, every moment when my body screamed for rest but my determination burned brighter. I had been saving for something special, something that would change everything. "Why are we even here, Jamie?" Victoria asked, finally turning to look at me. Her designer dress probably cost more than I made in 2 months, a gift from her wealthy boyfriend who owned 3 restaurants in the suburbs. "I mean, no offense, but this place is way out of your league." The word stung, but I had grown accustomed to Victoria's casual cruelty. She had always been the golden child, the one who married well, who never had to work for anything. At 28, she drove a BMW and lived in a penthouse while I, at 25, shared a cramped apartment with 2 roommates and counted every dollar. "I have business here," I said simply, walking toward the back of the store where the more exclusive pieces were kept. Victoria followed, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. "Business? What kind of business could you possibly have in a place like this?" Before I could answer, Mr. Morrison himself appeared from behind a velvet curtain. He was an elderly man with kind eyes and gentle hands that had crafted some of the most beautiful pieces in the city. His face lit up when he saw me. "Jamie, right on time. I've been looking forward to this moment for weeks." Victoria's eyebrows shot up. "You know her?" Mr. Morrison smiled warmly. "Know her? Jamie has been one of my most dedicated customers. She's been coming here every month for almost a year, making payments on a very special commission." "Commission?" Victoria's voice rose an octave. "What kind of commission?" I felt my cheeks flush. This wasn't how I wanted this moment to go. I had imagined coming here alone, finally completing the purchase that had consumed my thoughts and my savings for so long. But Victoria had insisted on tagging along when I mentioned I had an appointment downtown, probably hoping to drag me shopping afterward at stores more suited to what she perceived as my budget. "It's nothing dramatic," I said, trying to downplay the situation. "Just something I've been saving for." But Mr. Morrison's eyes twinkled with excitement. "Nothing dramatic? My dear, what you've commissioned is one of the most intricate pieces we've created in years. The craftsmanship alone took our master jeweler 3 months to complete." Victoria crossed her arms, her expression skeptical. "Okay, I'll bite. What exactly did you commission?" "A nice pair of earrings. Maybe a simple chain." The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. She had always spoken to me this way, as if my dreams were small, my aspirations limited by my bank account. Growing up, she had been the star, the one who got into the prestigious college while I went to community college and worked multiple jobs to pay for it. She had been the one who landed the corporate job while I struggled in the service industry, fighting for every promotion, every raise. "Why don't you tell her, Jamie?" Mr. Morrison encouraged gently. "There's no shame in hard work and dedication." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of this moment. For months, this had been my secret, my private goal. Every sacrifice had been leading to this day. Every time Victoria had made a snide comment about my second-hand clothes or my beat-up car, I had thought about this moment. "I commissioned an engagement ring," I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's mouth fell open, and for the first time in my life, I saw her truly speechless. "An engagement ring?" she finally managed. "For who? You're not even dating anyone seriously." "It's not for me to wear," I explained, my voice growing stronger. "It's for me to give." Mr. Morrison nodded approvingly. "Jamie is proposing to her girlfriend next week. She wanted to design something truly unique, something that would represent their journey together." Victoria's face went through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, and then something that looked almost like embarrassment. She had been so focused on her assumptions about my financial limitations that she had never stopped to consider what I might be capable of achieving through sheer determination and sacrifice. "But how could you possibly afford," she started, then caught herself. Afford what, Victoria? I asked, my patience finally wearing thin. A real piece of jewelry? Something that wasn't bought at a department store. The hurt in my voice must have been evident because Mr. Morrison stepped in smoothly. Perhaps we should focus on the business at hand. Jamie, are you ready to see the finished piece? My heart hammered in my chest as I nodded. This was it. The moment I had been working toward for 11 months. Every extra shift, every skipped meal, every time I had walked instead of taking the bus to save a few dollars, it had all been leading to this. Mr. Morrison disappeared into the back room, leaving Victoria and me standing in uncomfortable silence. I could feel her eyes on me, reassessing everything she thought she knew about my life, my capabilities, my worth. Jamie, she said softly, I didn't know you were seeing someone seriously. There's a lot you don't know about my life, I replied, not looking at her. You never ask. The truth was, I had been with Carol for 2 years. We had met at the community college where I was taking night classes to finish my business degree, and she was teaching art classes. Carol was everything Victoria wasn't: kind, supportive, and completely unimpressed by material wealth. She saw potential in me that even I sometimes doubted. But Victoria lived in her own world, where success was measured by the size of her house and the brand of her handbag. She had never bothered to really get to know Carol, dismissing her as that artsy girl whenever she came up in conversation. How long have you been planning this? Victoria asked. Almost a year, I admitted, since Carol mentioned that her grandmother's ring was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. It was lost in a house fire when she was a teenager. She described it to me, once the setting, the way the light caught the stones. I wanted to recreate something similar. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more uncertain than I had ever heard it. I had no idea you were this serious about anyone, about anything like this. Before I could respond, Mr. Morrison returned, carrying a small velvet box. My hands trembled as he placed it in my palms. This was it, the culmination of every sacrifice, every moment of doubt, every time I had questioned whether I could actually pull this off. Go ahead, he encouraged. Open it. I lifted the lid, and even though I had seen the computer renderings, even though I had approved every detail during the design process, nothing had prepared me for seeing the finished ring in person. The center stone, a brilliant cut diamond that had taken me 6 months to save for, caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the velvet. The setting was intricate, exactly matching the description Carol had given me of her grandmother's ring, but updated with small personal touches that represented our relationship. Victoria gasped. Actually gasped. Jamie, she whispered, it's stunning. The ring was stunning. It was perfect. And it was mine, really, truly mine. I had earned every facet, every delicate curve of the platinum band. The diamond is 1.5 carats, Mr. Morrison explained, his voice filled with professional pride. Excellent cut, VS1 clarity, e-color. The side stones are genuine sapphires, as you requested, to match Carol's birthstone. The engraving inside the band reads, "Forever starts now," just as you specified. I carefully lifted the ring from its cushioned bed, marveling at its weight, its presence. This wasn't costume jewelry or a cheap substitute. This was the real thing, and I had made it happen through my own hard work and determination. How much? Victoria started to ask, then stopped herself. The total investment was $12,000, Mr. Morrison said matter-of-factly. Jamie has been making payments of $800 to $1,000 per month. Never missed a payment, never asked for an extension. One of the most dedicated customers we've ever had. I saw Victoria's face change as she processed this information. $12,000. More money than she probably spent on shoes in a year, but money that I had earned through sweat and sacrifice and unwavering commitment to the woman I loved. I don't understand, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. How did you save that much money? You work at a diner. I work at 2 diners, I corrected. And I clean offices on weekends. And I tutor high school students 3 evenings a week. And I sell handmade crafts at the farmer's market every Saturday morning. The list felt endless because it was. Every free moment of my life for the past year had been dedicated to earning money for this ring. I had turned my life into a carefully orchestrated machine. Every hour accounted for. every dollar allocated with precision. Victoria stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "I had no idea you were working so hard." "You never asked," I repeated, but this time without the edge of anger. The ring in my hands had filled me with a sense of accomplishment that made Victoria's opinions seem less important, less capable of hurting me. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat gently. "There is one more element to the commission. Jamie, would you like to show her the other piece?" I had almost forgotten about the second part of my order. While the engagement ring had been my primary focus, I had also commissioned something else, something that represented not just my love for Carol but my newfound belief in myself. "There's more?" Victoria asked, her voice weak. I nodded, my confidence growing with each passing moment. "Mr. Morrison, could you bring out the matching wedding band?" As he disappeared again into the back room, I finally turned to face my sister directly. The power dynamic between us was shifting, had been shifting since the moment I walked into the store with purpose and left with proof of my own capability. "Victoria," I said, my voice steady and clear, "you've spent our entire lives assuming you knew what I was capable of. You've made jokes about my job, my apartment, my clothes, my car. You've treated me like I was somehow less than you because I didn't marry into money or land a corporate job right out of college." She opened her mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. You want to know the difference between us. You've had everything handed to you, and you've never had to fight for anything that really mattered. I've had to fight for everything: my education, my independence, my relationship, and yes, this ring. And you know what I learned through all that fighting?" Victoria was silent, her expensive purse clutched tightly in her hands. "I learned that I'm capable of far more than either of us ever imagined. I learned that when you want something badly enough, when you're willing to sacrifice and work and never give up, you can achieve things that seem impossible." Mr. Morrison returned with a second box, this one slightly larger. He placed it on the counter between us, and I opened it to reveal a wedding band that perfectly complemented the engagement ring. The craftsmanship was exquisite, a work of art that would sit on Carol's finger for the rest of our lives together. "The set is complete now," Mr. Morrison said with satisfaction. 12 months of planning, 3 months of crafting, and now they're ready for their purpose. I closed both boxes and slipped them into my purse, my cheap, second-hand purse that suddenly felt like the most valuable thing I owned because it contained the proof of what I could accomplish. Victoria was staring at me with an expression I had never seen before. Respect, maybe, or recognition. For the first time in our relationship, she was seeing me not as her struggling little sister, but as a woman who had set a goal and achieved it through her own merit. "Jamie," she said softly, "I owe you an apology." But I was already walking toward the door. I had gotten what I came for, not just the rings, but something far more valuable. I had reclaimed my sense of self-worth, my belief in my own capabilities. Victoria's opinion, while it would always matter because she was family, no longer had the power to define me. "Thank you, Mr. Morrison," I called over my shoulder. "Carol is going to love them." As I stepped out into the Chicago afternoon, the autumn air felt different. Cleaner, full of possibility. In 6 days, I would be taking Carol to the spot where we had our first date, and I would be asking her to marry me with a ring that represented not just my love for her, but my love for the person I had become in the process of earning it. Behind me, I could hear Victoria's heels clicking frantically as she hurried to catch up. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for her approval or her permission to feel proud of myself. I had learned to buy real gold. More importantly, I had learned that I was worth it. The coffee shop where Carol and I met every Tuesday morning buzzed with the usual pre-work crowd. Steam rose from dozens of cups, while the autumn rain drummed against the large windows. I sat in our regular booth, the ring boxes hidden in my jacket pocket, their weight both comforting and terrifying. Victoria had been calling me nonstop since yesterday's encounter at the jewelry store, but I hadn't answered. I needed time to process what had happened, to fully absorb the magnitude of what I had accomplished and what lay ahead. "You look different," Carol said as she slid into the seat across from me, her dark hair damp from the rain. She wore her favorite denim jacket over a paint-stained t-shirt, evidence of her late-night work session in the studio apartment she had converted into an art space. "Different how?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual while my heart hammered against my ribs. I don't know. Lighter, maybe? Like you've been carrying something heavy and finally put it down. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, studying my face with the same intensity she brought to her paintings. Good different. Carol had always been able to read me like an open book. It was one of the things I loved most about her, but right now it made me nervous. I had planned to wait until Saturday for the proposal, to take her to the botanical garden where we had our first official date 2 years ago. But sitting here, looking into her warm brown eyes, I felt the truth bubbling up inside me like champagne that had been shaken too long. I had an interesting day yesterday, I said carefully. Tell me about it. Carol leaned forward, genuinely interested. She always was. In 2 years of being together, she had never once dismissed my stories from work or made me feel like my daily struggles were insignificant. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Victoria's name flashed on the screen for the 12th time since last night. You should probably answer that, Carol said gently. She seems persistent. I hesitated, then declined the call. She can wait. But even as I said it, I knew Victoria wouldn't give up easily. She had left 3 voicemails, each one more apologetic than the last, and sent a string of text messages that I hadn't opened. The Victoria I knew didn't apologize, didn't admit when she was wrong, didn't acknowledge other people's feelings. Her behavior was as surprising as it was suspicious. Jamie, Carol said softly, what's really going on? You've been acting strange for weeks now. Working even more hours than usual, if that's possible. Coming home exhausted and distracted. I've been worried about you. The concern in her voice nearly undid me. This was exactly why I loved her, why I had spent a year sacrificing everything to buy her the perfect ring. Carol cared about me not because of what I could provide or how I made her look, but simply because of who I was. I've been working on something, I admitted. Something important. More important than your health? Jamie, you've lost weight. You're pale. Yesterday, I found you asleep at the kitchen table with your work clothes still on. Guilt washed over me. In my determination to save money for the ring, I had been neglecting everything else, including taking care of myself and being fully present in our relationship. The irony wasn't lost on me that my effort to prove my love might have made Carol question it instead. My phone buzzed with a text message. Despite myself, I glanced at it. Victoria. Jamie, please call me back. I've been thinking about yesterday all night, and I realize how badly I've treated you. I want to make things right. Is everything okay with your sister? Carol asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the message. Carol and Victoria had met several times over the past 2 years, but their interactions had always been polite and surface level. Victoria treated Carol the same way she treated me, with barely concealed condescension wrapped in superficial pleasantries. That's unexpected, Carol said diplomatically. What happened yesterday? Before I could answer, Victoria herself appeared at our table. She looked different than she had at the jewelry store, less polished, more vulnerable. Her usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled, and she wasn't wearing any makeup, which was virtually unheard of. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice tentative. Jamie, I really need to talk to you. Carol started to stand. I can give you some privacy. No, Victoria said quickly. Actually, I think you should hear this too. It involves both of you. I felt a chill of apprehension. Whatever Victoria wanted to say, it was clearly important enough for her to track us down at our regular coffee shop, which meant she had been paying more attention to my life than I had realized. Victoria sat down heavily in the chair next to Carol, her expensive purse looking out of place in the casual coffee shop atmosphere. I spent all night thinking about what happened yesterday, and I realized something that made me sick to my stomach. What? I asked warily. I realized that I don't actually know anything about your life. Real things, I mean. I know where you work and where you live, but I don't know about your dreams, your plans, your relationship. She looked at Carol with something approaching shame. I don't even know how you two met, and you've been together for 2 years. Carol glanced at me, clearly confused by this unexpected vulnerability from my usually self-assured sister. We met at the community college, Carol said slowly. I was teaching a continuing education art class, and Jamie was taking business courses at night while working during the day. Business courses? Victoria's eyebrows rose. I didn't know you were going back to school. I never told you because you never asked, I said, echoing the phrase that had become my refrain yesterday. I'm finishing my bachelor's degree in business administration. I have 1 semester left. Victoria stared at me. 1 semester left? Jamie, that's amazing. Why didn't you tell me? When would I have told you? When you were complaining about your expensive restaurants. When you were showing off your new car. When you were making jokes about my clothes or my job. The words came out harsher than I intended, but they were true. Carol reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Jamie's been working incredibly hard. She's carrying a full course load while working multiple jobs. Her professors love her. She's on the dean's list. Dean's list? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. I hadn't planned to share any of this information, but Carol's pride in my accomplishments was evident in every word. While Victoria had spent 2 years dismissing my potential, Carol had been celebrating every small victory, every completed assignment, every passed exam. There's more, Carol continued, her eyes shining with the kind of pride that Victoria had never shown in my achievements. Jamie's already gotten preliminary approval for a small business loan. She's planning to open her own restaurant. The color drained from Victoria's face. Your own restaurant? I felt exposed, vulnerable. My business plan was still in its early stages, and I hadn't wanted to share it with Victoria until I was further along. Victoria's boyfriend owned restaurants, successful ones, and I didn't want to endure her inevitable comparisons or unsolicited advice. It's just an idea, I said defensively. It's not just an idea, Carol corrected gently. She's done market research, location scouting, menu development. She's been working on this for months. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I feel like the worst sister in the world. You're not the worst, I said automatically, then caught myself. But you haven't been great. I've been terrible. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, which was shocking enough to silence both Carol and me. I had never seen my composed, confident sister cry. I've been so wrapped up in my own life, so convinced that I was the successful one, that I completely missed the fact that you were building something real. She turned to Carol. And I've been dismissive of you too, haven't I? I've treated you like you were just some phase Jamie was going through instead of recognizing that you're the person who's been supporting her through all of this. Carol was clearly uncomfortable with the conversation's direction, but she answered honestly. You've never been unkind, exactly. Just distant. Distant, Victoria repeated. That's a nice way of saying I've been a snob. The coffee shop's atmosphere seemed to shift around our table. Other customers continued their conversations. The baristas continued making drinks, but our little corner felt suspended in time. Yesterday at the jewelry store, Victoria continued, I made assumptions about what you could afford, what you were capable of. I was so embarrassed by my own behavior that I couldn't sleep last night. $12,000, Jamie. You saved $12,000 while working multiple jobs and going to school. Do you have any idea how impressive that is? I felt heat rise in my cheeks. It was important to me. Important enough to sacrifice your health, Carol said quietly. Important enough to work yourself to exhaustion. There was concern in her voice, but also something else. A question she hadn't asked yet, but that hung in the air between us. Victoria seemed to sense the undercurrent of tension. What did you buy at the jewelry store? If you don't mind me asking. This was the moment. I could deflect, change the subject, wait for Saturday as planned. Or I could trust that the love Carol and I had built over 2 years was strong enough to handle this moment of vulnerability. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box containing the engagement ring. Carol's breath caught. Jamie, I bought this, I said simply, setting the box on the table between us. I've been saving for almost a year to buy this. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth, but she didn't say anything. For once, she seemed to understand that this moment wasn't about her. Carol stared at the box without touching it. Is this why you've been working so hard? Why you've been so tired and stressed? I nodded. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted to be able to give you something that showed you how much you mean to me, how much I believe in us. Jamie, Carol said softly, you didn't need to nearly kill yourself to prove that to me. I know, I said, but I wanted to. I wanted to show myself that I could do it, too. Carol finally reached for the box, her hands trembling slightly. When she opened it, her gasp was audible even over the coffee shop's ambient noise. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Jamie, it looks just like your grandmother's ring," I finished. "You described it to me last Christmas, remember? After we watched that old movie where the woman inherited her grandmother's jewelry. You said it was the most beautiful ring you'd ever seen." Tears spilled over Carol's cheeks as she lifted the ring from its velvet bed. The diamond caught the coffee shop's overhead lighting and threw tiny sparks of light across her face. "I can't believe you remembered that conversation," she said. "I can't believe you recreated it." "I remembered because it mattered to you," I said. "Everything that matters to you matters to me." Victoria was crying now too, but silently, as if she didn't want to intrude on our moment. Carol looked up at me, the ring still cradled in her palm. "Are you asking me what I think you're asking me?" My heart hammered, so loudly I was certain the entire coffee shop could hear it. This wasn't how I had planned this moment. I had envisioned the botanical garden, the spot where we had our first date, maybe some romantic music playing in the background. Instead, we were in a crowded coffee shop with my emotionally overwhelmed sister as an unexpected witness. But looking at Carol's face, seeing the love and surprise and joy in her eyes, I realized that the setting didn't matter. What mattered was the question itself, and the love that had motivated every sacrifice I had made to get to this point. "Carol Martinez," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "will you marry me?" The coffee shop seemed to hold its breath. Conversations at nearby tables slowed as people realized what was happening. Even the espresso machine seemed to quiet. Carol looked at the ring again, then at me, then back at the ring. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "Yes," she said simply. "Of course, yes." The relief that flooded through me was so intense, it was almost overwhelming. I had been carrying the weight of this secret, this plan, this hope for so long that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to breathe freely. Carol slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. I had guessed her size based on a ring she sometimes wore on her middle finger, and apparently my estimation had been correct. "It's perfect," she said, holding her hand up to admire the way the light played through the diamond. "Jamie, it's absolutely perfect." Victoria finally found her voice. "Congratulations," she said, her words genuine and warm in a way I hadn't heard from her in years. "Both of you. This is beautiful, and I'm honored that I got to witness it." Carol reached across the table with her free hand and squeezed Victoria's arm. "Thank you for pushing Jamie to talk to me. I think we both needed this conversation." "I'm just glad I finally woke up," Victoria said. "I've wasted 2 years being jealous of something I didn't even understand." "Jealous?" I asked, surprised. Victoria nodded, wiping her eyes with a napkin. "Jealous of your relationship, your independence, your determination. I've had everything handed to me, and I've never had to fight for anything meaningful. You've built this life entirely on your own merit, and instead of being proud of you, I've been threatened by you." The admission hung in the air between us, raw and honest in a way that Victoria had never been before. "I want to do better," she continued. "I want to be the kind of sister who celebrates your successes instead of diminishing them. I want to get to know Carol as a person instead of just tolerating her as your girlfriend. And I want to support your restaurant dream instead of competing with it." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen before. Vulnerability, genuine remorse, the possibility of change. "I'd like that," I said carefully. "But it's going to take time. 2 years of feeling dismissed doesn't just disappear overnight." "I understand," Victoria said. "I'm willing to put in the work." Carol held up her hand again, admiring the ring. "I still can't believe you did this. The planning, the saving, the secrecy. How did you manage to keep it hidden for so long?" "It wasn't easy," I admitted. "There were times I wanted to tell you, especially when you were worried about me working so much. But I wanted the surprise to be complete." "Well, mission accomplished." Carol laughed, then grew serious again. "But Jamie, promise me something. Anything. Promise me that from now on, we make big decisions together. I love this ring, and I love that you wanted to surprise me, but I also love you too much to watch you sacrifice your health for anything, even something this beautiful." I nodded, understanding the gentle rebuke in her words. I promise. No more secret-saving missions that involve me working myself into the ground. Good, Carol said, then grinned. Because if we're planning a wedding, we're going to need both of us functioning at full capacity. Victoria perked up at the mention of wedding planning. If you want any help. Carol and I exchanged glances. The old Victoria would have tried to take over, to turn our wedding into her vision of what it should be. But this Victoria seemed different, more aware of boundaries, more respectful of our autonomy. We might take you up on that, I said cautiously. But it's going to be our wedding, planned our way. Of course, Victoria agreed quickly. Whatever you need, however you want it. I just want to be part of your lives in whatever way you'll let me. I felt something shift in my chest, a loosening of old resentment that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Victoria still had a lot to prove, but for the first time in our adult relationship, she seemed willing to try. My phone buzzed with a text message from my manager at the diner asking if I could pick up an extra shift. Without thinking, I started to type a response accepting it. Carol gently placed her hand over my phone. What did we just talk about? I looked at the message again, then at my exhausted reflection in the coffee shop window, then at the woman I had just asked to marry me. For the first time in a year, I typed a response declining the extra work. There, I said, showing her the screen. No more working myself to death. Thank you, Carol said, lifting my hand to kiss the spot where my own wedding band would someday sit. Victoria watched our interaction with interest. You two are good together, she said. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. As we sat in the coffee shop, Carol admiring her ring, and Victoria tentatively trying to rebuild the relationship she had spent 2 years neglecting, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with checking items off a to-do list. I had set out to buy a ring, but I had ended up with something far more valuable, proof that I was capable of achieving anything I set my mind to, a deeper understanding of what really mattered in my relationship with Carol, and the possibility of a real relationship with my sister for the first time in our adult lives. The ring was beautiful, but the person I had become in the process of earning it was even more precious. And now, with Carol's yes still echoing in my ears, I was ready to start the next chapter of becoming the person I wanted to be. 3 weeks had passed since the proposal, and the ring on Carol's finger caught the light every time she gestured, which was often. She was in full wedding planning mode. Her art studio transformed into a command center of fabric swatches, venue brochures, and color-coded spreadsheets that rivaled anything Victoria had ever produced in her corporate job. I was reviewing loan documents at our kitchen table when Victoria knocked on our apartment door. This had become a pattern, her stopping by unannounced, ostensibly to help with wedding planning but really trying to insert herself into the daily rhythms of our life in a way she had never bothered to do before. Come in, I called, not looking up from the papers spread across the table. The small business loan officer had been thorough, and I was determined to understand every clause, every requirement, every potential pitfall before signing anything. Victoria entered carrying coffee for all 3 of us and a box of pastries from the expensive bakery downtown. Her attempts to win us over through food had become another pattern, one that Carol found endearing and I found slightly manipulative, though I appreciated the effort. Still working on the restaurant paperwork? Victoria asked, setting the coffee at my elbow and peering over my shoulder at the documents. Every detail, I confirmed. I'm not signing anything I don't completely understand. Carol emerged from her studio with paint under her fingernails and excitement in her eyes. Jamie, you have to see what I've been working on. She led us both into the converted studio space, where an easel held a canvas that made me catch my breath. It was a painting of the botanical garden where we'd had our first date, but rendered in a style that was both realistic and dreamlike. The colors were richer than life, the light more golden, the flowers more vibrant. It's for the restaurant, Carol explained. I thought it could hang behind the host station, something that tells our story to everyone who comes in. Victoria moved closer to examine the painting. Carol, this is incredible. The detail work, the way you've captured the light, you're really talented. It was the first completely genuine compliment Victoria had ever paid Carol, and I could see its impact on my fiancé's face. Thank you, Carol said, clearly pleased. I've been working on a whole series, actually. Jamie's business plan mentions wanting local art on the walls, so I thought I could contribute. I studied the painting, overwhelmed by the thought that Carol was not just supporting my dream, but actively contributing to making it reality. "It's perfect," I said softly. "It's exactly what the space needs." Victoria was quiet for a moment, taking in the painting and the obvious love that had gone into creating it. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what I could contribute to the restaurant project," she said carefully. "I know you don't need my help, and I know I haven't earned the right to be part of this yet, but I have some experience with the business side of restaurants." I felt my guard go up immediately. Victoria's boyfriend owned 3 successful restaurants, and I had spent months dreading the inevitable moment when she would start offering unsolicited advice or making unfavorable comparisons. "What kind of experience?" I asked warily. "I've been working with Nathan on expanding his restaurant group," Victoria explained. "Marketing, operations, supplier relationships. I know it's not the same as starting from scratch like you're doing, but some of the principles might be useful." Carol looked between us, sensing the tension. "What are you thinking specifically?" Victoria pulled out her phone and showed us a document. "I put together some supplier contacts who might give better rates to new businesses. And there's a marketing consultant I work with who owes me a favor. She might be willing to do some pro bono work on brand development." I stared at the list of contacts, surprised by how thorough and genuinely helpful it was. This wasn't Victoria trying to take over or show off her connections. This was Victoria actually trying to support my dream in concrete, practical ways. "You did this for me?" I asked. "I did this because I want your restaurant to succeed," Victoria said simply. "And because I want to prove that I can be the kind of sister who helps instead of judges." Carol moved closer to examine Victoria's phone screen. "Some of these suppliers are really high-end. The kind of places that usually require huge minimum orders. I may have mentioned that you're my sister, and that your restaurant is going to be something special," Victoria admitted. "They're willing to start with smaller orders and let you build up." For the first time since Victoria had begun her campaign to repair our relationship, I felt a crack in my armor of skepticism. This wasn't empty gesturing or emotional manipulation. This was Victoria using her actual resources and connections to help me succeed. "Thank you," I said and meant it. "This is really helpful." Victoria's face lit up with relief and genuine happiness. "There's more, actually, but I want to make sure you're okay with me being involved before I go any further." "What else?" Carol asked curiously. I talked to Nathan about Jamie's business plan, just the general concept, not the specific details, Victoria said quickly, seeing my expression. "He thinks the concept is solid, and he offered to let Jamie stage at one of his restaurants for a few weeks before opening. Learn some of the operational stuff that you can't get from books." Staging working for free in a professional kitchen to learn techniques and systems was something I had read about but never thought would be accessible to me. Most high-end restaurants only offered staging opportunities to culinary school graduates or experienced professionals. "He would do that?" I asked, skeptical. "He was impressed when I told him about your work ethic and determination," Victoria said. "The way you save for the engagement ring, the way you're balancing school and multiple jobs while planning a business. He said those are the qualities that matter more than formal training." Carol squeezed my hand. "Jamie, this could be huge for you." I felt overwhelmed by the sudden expansion of possibilities. 4 months, I had been planning to figure everything out through trial and error, learning from mistakes and hoping they wouldn't be too costly. The opportunity to learn from established professionals was beyond anything I had dared to hope for. "Why is Nathan willing to help me?" I asked. "He doesn't even know me." Victoria hesitated, then answered honestly. "Because I told him I've been a terrible sister, and that helping you succeed was one way I could start making amends. And because he believes in supporting small businesses when he can." The honesty in her answer was unexpected. The old Victoria would have found a way to make Nathan's generosity seem like her own idea, her own achievement. This Victoria was being transparent about her motivations and Nathan's. "I would love the opportunity to stage," I said slowly. "But I want to meet Nathan first, make sure this is something he actually wants to do and not just something he's doing as a favor to you." "Of course," Victoria agreed immediately. He suggested dinner next week. All of us, you, Carol, me, Nathan. Casual, just getting to know each other. Carol looked at me questioningly. Meeting Victoria's boyfriend had always been low on my priority list, mainly because I had assumed he would be as dismissive of me as Victoria had been. Okay, I said. Dinner sounds good. Victoria's smile was radiant. Really? You'll do it. I'll consider it, I corrected. I want to meet him and see if his offer is genuine. It is, Victoria assured me. Nathan doesn't make offers he doesn't intend to keep. We spent the rest of the afternoon going through Victoria's supplier contacts and discussing the potential staging opportunity. For the first time in our adult relationship, Victoria and I were having a productive conversation about something that mattered to me. Carol painted while we talked, adding details to the botanical garden scene. Every so often, she would hold up her brush and smile at her ring, which still seemed to surprise her every time she noticed it. Have you set a date yet? Victoria asked during a lull in our business discussion. We're thinking next fall, Carol said without looking up from her canvas. After the restaurant opens and gets established. Next fall, Victoria repeated. That gives us plenty of time to plan something beautiful. Us? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Victoria caught herself. Sorry. That gives you plenty of time to plan something beautiful. I'm available to help if you want the help. It was a small correction, but it represented a significant shift in Victoria's approach. She was learning to offer assistance without assuming control, to support without taking over. We might need help, Carol admitted. Neither of us has ever planned a wedding before. I've planned a lot of events, Victoria offered. Corporate stuff, mostly, but the principles are similar. Organization, timelines, vendor management. I considered this. Victoria was exceptionally organized, and she did have experience coordinating complex events. More importantly, she seemed genuinely committed to letting us maintain control of our own wedding. Let's see how the restaurant planning goes, I said diplomatically. If we work well together on that, maybe we can talk about wedding planning. Victoria nodded eagerly. That sounds fair. My phone rang, interrupting our conversation. The caller ID showed my manager from the diner, and I felt the familiar surge of anxiety that came with unexpected calls from work. I should take this, I said, stepping out onto our small balcony. Jamie, I'm sorry to call you on your day off, my manager said without preamble. But we're really short-staffed tonight, and I was hoping you could come in. I looked through the sliding glass door at Carol and Victoria, who were now examining the painting together and discussing color choices. For the first time in over a year, I was having a day that wasn't completely consumed by work or school or wedding planning. A day where I could just exist, think, plan for the future without the immediate pressure of earning every possible dollar. I can't tonight, I said. I'm sorry. Are you sure? It's triple overtime because of the staffing situation. Triple overtime was serious money, the kind of money I would have jumped at just a month ago. But looking at the loan documents spread across my kitchen table, at Carol's painting that would hang in my restaurant, at Victoria's list of supplier contacts, I realized that my circumstances were changing. I was moving from survival mode to building mode, and that required a different kind of investment of my time and energy. I'm sure, I said firmly. But thank you for thinking of me. When I came back inside, Carol looked up from her painting with concern. Everything okay? More than okay, I said, settling back into my chair at the kitchen table. I just turned down overtime to spend the evening working on my business plan. Victoria looked impressed. That must have been hard to do. It was, I admitted, but I'm learning that sometimes you have to say no to good opportunities so you can say yes to better ones. I gathered the loan documents and began reading through the section on equipment financing. The numbers were daunting, but they were also concrete, achievable. With the loan approval, Victoria's supplier contacts, and the potential staging opportunity, my restaurant was starting to feel less like an impossible dream and more like an inevitable reality. Jamie, Carol said from across the room, can you come look at this section? I want to make sure I'm getting the proportions right. I moved to stand behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist as she leaned back against me. The painting was taking shape beautifully, capturing not just the visual details of the botanical garden, but somehow also the emotion of that first date, the sense of possibility that had existed between us even then. It's perfect, I said, kissing the top of her head. Just like everything else you do. Victoria watched us with an expression that was wistful but not jealous. You two are really good together, she said. I'm glad I'm finally paying attention enough to see it. As the afternoon turned to evening, we ordered takeout and continued working, me on loan documents, Carol on her painting, Victoria on her list of potential wedding vendors, just in case we needed them later. It was the most domestic, comfortable time the three of us had ever spent together. When Victoria finally got ready to leave, she hugged both of us goodbye, something she had never done before. "Thank you," she said to me, "for giving me a chance to be better." "Thank you for actually trying to be better," I replied. After Victoria left, Carol and I sat on our couch, her feet in my lap, her engagement ring catching the light from our reading lamp. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For letting Victoria help. I know that wasn't easy for you." I considered this. She was right. Accepting Victoria's assistance had required swallowing a lot of pride and suspicion. But it had also opened up possibilities that wouldn't have existed otherwise. "I'm learning that maybe I don't have to do everything by myself," I said. "Maybe accepting help doesn't make me weak or dependent." "Maybe it just makes you smart," Carol suggested. I laughed. "Maybe it does." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. The apartment felt different than it had a month ago, not because anything physical had changed, but because our future felt more solid, more real. "Carol," I said eventually, "are you happy about the way I proposed?" I know it wasn't very romantic, doing it in a coffee shop with my sister crying at the next table. Carol twisted her engagement ring, making the diamonds sparkle in the lamplight. "Are you kidding? It was perfect." "Perfect? Really?" "Jamie, you spent a year working yourself into exhaustion to buy me a ring that you designed to match a story I told you once about my grandmother. You remembered every detail I shared about something that was important to me, and you made it real. Then you proposed in the place where we go every week, surrounded by the ordinary moments that make up our actual life together. How could that be anything but perfect?" When she put it that way, the proposal did sound pretty good. "Plus," Carol added with a grin, "watching your sister realize that she had completely underestimated you was worth the price of admission. I've never seen anyone look so shocked and guilty at the same time." I laughed. She did look pretty stunned. "She's trying, you know," Carol said seriously. "I can see the effort she's putting into changing how she relates to both of us. That doesn't erase the past, but it's something." "I know," I said. "I'm trying too. Trying to let her try, if that makes sense." "It makes perfect sense." I picked up one of the loan documents and reviewed the timeline for equipment delivery. 6 months from signing to opening day, if everything went according to plan. 6 months to transform from someone who dreamed about owning a restaurant to someone who actually did. "Are you scared?" Carol asked, following my gaze to the paperwork. "Terrified," I admitted, "but also excited. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm building something instead of just surviving." "We're building something," Carol corrected. "You're not doing this alone anymore." She was right. The restaurant would have my name on it, but it would be built with Carol's support, Victoria's connections, Nathan's mentorship, and the foundation of confidence I had discovered while saving for the engagement ring. The ring that had started as proof that I could afford real gold had become proof that I was capable of achieving anything I was willing to work for. And now, surrounded by loan documents and wedding plans and the painting that would hang in my restaurant, I was ready to find out just how much I was capable of achieving. The weight I had been carrying for so long, the weight of proving myself, of earning my place, of demonstrating my worth, was finally lifting. In its place was a different kind of weight, the weight of responsibility, of opportunity, of a future that I was actively creating rather than simply hoping for. It was a much better kind of weight to carry. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of Garden Table, my restaurant, watching the controlled chaos of opening night service. The dining room buzzed with conversation, servers moved efficiently between tables, and through the pass-through window I could see my kitchen staff working in perfect synchronization. Carol's painting hung exactly where she had envisioned it, behind the host station, and I had watched customer after customer pause to admire it throughout the evening. The botanical garden scene seemed to glow under the warm lighting, telling our story to everyone who entered. "How are you feeling, boss?" asked Miguel, my sous chef, appearing beside me with a plate of our signature dish, herb-crusted salmon with seasonal vegetables. Everything sourced from the local suppliers Victoria had connected me with. Like I might throw up, I admitted, then took a deep breath. But also like I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Miguel grinned. That sounds about right for opening night. I had met Miguel during my staging at Nathan's restaurant. He had been working there for 3 years, saving money to eventually open his own place. When I offered him the position of sous chef, explaining that I wanted to build a team of people who understood what it meant to work toward a dream, he had accepted immediately. Table 12 is asking to speak with the owner, said Elena, my front-of-house manager. She was a recent culinary school graduate who had impressed me during interviews with her genuine passion for hospitality and her understanding that great restaurants were built on relationships, not just great food. Table 12 was where Victoria, Nathan, and Carol sat, along with my parents who had driven in from Wisconsin for the opening. Seeing my family together, all of them proud and supportive, still felt surreal after years of feeling like the struggling one, the one with unrealistic dreams. I walked to their table, my chef's jacket feeling both foreign and completely natural at the same time. How is everything? I asked, though I could already see from their empty plates that the answer was positive. Incredible, my mother said, beaming. Jamie, I had no idea you could cook like this. The staging helped, I said, glancing at Nathan. A lot. Nathan had been true to his word, letting me work in his kitchens for 6 weeks before my opening. I had learned more about restaurant operations in those 6 weeks than in all my previous food service experience combined. More importantly, I had learned that I belonged in a professional kitchen, that my instincts were sound and my work ethic was exactly what the industry demanded. The whole experience has been flawless, Victoria said, and I could hear genuine emotion in her voice. From the moment we walked in, everything has been perfect. She wasn't exaggerating. The service had been smooth, the food consistent, the atmosphere exactly what I had envisioned. Months of planning, training, and preparation had culminated in an opening night that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. There's something else, Victoria continued, reaching into her purse. We have an opening night gift for you. She handed me an envelope that felt heavier than it should have. Inside was a check made out to Garden Table for $5,000. Victoria! I started to protest, but she held up her hand. It's not charity, she said firmly. It's an investment. Nathan and I want to be silent partners, if you'll have us. We believe in what you're building here. I stared at the check, overwhelmed. $5,000 would cover the unexpected expenses that always came with a new business, would give me breathing room to focus on quality instead of just survival. You don't have to do this, I said. We want to, Nathan said, speaking for the first time since I'd approached the table. Victoria told me about your journey to get here, and frankly, I'm impressed. Most people who want to open restaurants have big dreams, but no understanding of what it actually takes. You've proven you understand both the dream and the work. Carol reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Say yes, Jamie. Let them help. I looked around the table at these people who had become my support system. My parents, who had always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Nathan, who had shared his expertise without expecting anything in return. Victoria, who had transformed from my harshest critic to my most enthusiastic supporter. And Carol, who wore her engagement ring like a promise and had painted the story of our love on the wall for everyone to see. Okay, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you. All of you. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, something that had become a regular occurrence since that day in the jewelry store. I'm so proud of you, Jamie. I'm proud to be your sister. The words I had waited my entire life to hear from her. Words that meant even more now because they were earned, not given out of obligation. I need to get back to the kitchen, I said, tucking the check into my jacket pocket. But thank you. For being here, for believing in this. We'll be here every step of the way, my father said. Whatever you need. I returned to the kitchen, where the dinner rush was reaching its peak. Orders printed steadily from the ticket machine. My cooks moved with precision and purpose, and I felt the familiar adrenaline surge that came with orchestrating a complex operation. Chef, called Maria, one of my line cooks, we need more of the butternut squash soup for table 15. Coming up, I replied, ladling the soup into a bowl and adding the garnish of toasted pumpkin seeds and herb oil. This was what I had worked for. Not just the restaurant itself, but this moment of being needed, of being the person responsible for creating something that brought people joy. Every extra shift, every declined invitation, every exhausted night had led to this kitchen, this team, this sense of purpose. Chef Jamie, Elena appeared at the pass. The woman at table 8 would like to compliment the chef personally. She said the risotto reminded her of a dish she had in Italy. I smiled, wiping my hands on my apron. Personal compliments from customers were the best kind of validation proof that the food I was creating was not just technically sound but emotionally resonant. The woman at table 8 was elderly, dining alone with a book propped beside her plate. She looked up when I approached, her eyes bright with appreciation. "Are you the chef?" she asked. "I am. Jamie Peterson, owner and head chef." "The risotto was extraordinary," she said. "The technique, the seasoning, the texture, it was restaurant quality." "This is a restaurant," I said, confused. She laughed. "I mean fine dining restaurant quality. The kind of place you'd expect to pay twice what I paid tonight. You have real talent." "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved. "That means more to me than you know." "I'll be back," she promised. "And I'll be bringing friends." Word of mouth. The holy grail of restaurant success. I returned to the kitchen feeling like I was walking on air. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of orders, conversations with customers, and the deep satisfaction that came from watching my team execute flawlessly under pressure. By the time we served our last table and began closing procedures, I was exhausted but exhilarated. "Great job tonight, everyone," I said as my staff gathered around the pass for our post-service debrief. "You exceeded every expectation I had." "This is just the beginning, chef," Miguel said, and the rest of the team nodded in agreement. After the staff left, Carol and I sat at the bar while I counted the night's receipts. The numbers were better than my most optimistic projections. If we could maintain this level of business, Garden Table would be profitable within 3 months instead of the 6 months I had projected. "How does it feel?" Carol asked, spinning slowly on her bar stool. "Like I'm dreaming," I said honestly. "Like any moment I'm going to wake up and be back at the diner, talking about someday opening my own place." "It's real," Carol assured me. "You made it real." I looked around the restaurant, at the tables where people had shared meals and conversations, at the kitchen where my team had worked with professional pride, at Carol's painting that anchored the entire space with beauty and meaning. "We made it real," I corrected. Carol held up her left hand, where her engagement ring caught the light from the bar's pendant lamps. "Speaking of making things real, have you given any more thought to the wedding day?" We had been so focused on opening the restaurant that wedding planning had taken a back seat. But now, with Garden Table launched and running smoothly, it was time to turn our attention to the other major milestone waiting for us. "I was thinking about this while I was cooking tonight," I said. "What if we had the reception here? Not immediately, maybe in a few months when we're more established, but eventually. We could close for one evening and transform the space." Carol's eyes lit up. "Here? In the restaurant? Think about it. This place represents everything we've built together. Your art on the walls, the business I've worked toward for years, the support from Victoria and Nathan and our families. It would be perfect." Carol spun her stool around to face the dining room, imagining it transformed for a wedding reception. We could move all the tables to create a dance floor, string lights from the ceiling, set up the bar as a cocktail station. "Victoria could help with the logistics," I added. "She's been dying to prove herself as a wedding planner. And your kitchen team could cater. Miguel makes incredible desserts. He could design our wedding cake." The vision was taking shape, and it felt exactly right. Not a generic wedding in a generic venue, but a celebration in the space where we had proven that dreams could become reality through hard work and mutual support. "So we're really doing this?" Carol asked. "Getting married in your restaurant?" "Our restaurant," I corrected. "And yes, if you want to. I can't think of anywhere else I'd rather promise to spend my life with you." Carol leaned over and kissed me, soft and sweet, and tasting like the wine we had opened to celebrate opening night. "I love you, Chef Peterson. I love you too, future Mrs. Peterson." We sat in comfortable silence, surrounded by the evidence of everything we had accomplished. The restaurant hummed, Quietly around us, refrigerators cycling, the ice machine dropping cubes, the subtle sounds of a business settling in for the night. My phone buzzed with a text message from Victoria. Saw the review that just went up on the food blog. 5 stars. I'm crying happy tears. So proud of you. I showed the message to Carol, who immediately pulled out her phone to find the review. She read it aloud, her voice filled with excitement at each positive comment about the food, service, and atmosphere. Listen to this, she said. Garden Table represents everything a neighborhood restaurant should be: expertly prepared food served with genuine warmth in a space that feels both elegant and welcoming. Chef Peterson has created something special here, and if opening night is any indication, this restaurant is destined to become a local institution. A local institution, I repeated, amazed. 6 months ago, I was serving hash browns at a diner and wondering if I'd ever save enough money to propose to you. And now you're a restaurant owner with 5-star reviews who's planning a wedding in her own establishment, Carol said. If that's not the American dream, I don't know what is. She was right. This was exactly what I had been working toward, even when I couldn't articulate it clearly. Not just success, but the kind of success that was built on authentic relationships, quality work, and genuine care for the people I served. My phone rang, and I was surprised to see my old manager from the diner calling. Jamie, I just heard about your restaurant from one of our regular customers, she said without preamble. She said it was the best meal she'd had in years. That's wonderful to hear, I said, genuinely pleased that word was spreading. I wanted to congratulate you, but also to ask if you might be hiring. We have a couple of servers here who are looking for opportunities to advance, and I thought maybe have them come in tomorrow for interviews, I said without hesitation. Anyone you recommend is worth considering. After I hung up, Carol looked at me with amusement. Already getting recruitment calls? Good staff is everything in this business, I said. And I remember what it was like to want more opportunities than were available. You're going to be the kind of boss who gives people chances, Carol observed. I'm going to be the kind of boss I wish I'd had, I confirmed. We finished counting the receipts and began the final closing procedures. As I locked the front door and set the alarm system, I paused to look through the window at the dining room one more time. 6 months ago, this space had been empty, full of potential but requiring enormous faith to envision as a functioning restaurant. Now it was established, proven real. Tomorrow night we would do it all again: serve customers, create experiences, build relationships one meal at a time. Ready to go home? Carol asked, taking my hand. Ready, I said. But as we walked to our car, I realized that the definition of home had expanded. Home was still our apartment, our shared life, our private moments together. But home was also Garden Table, the place where I had finally become the person I had always been capable of being. The weight I had carried for so long, the weight of proving myself worthy of real gold, real love, real success, had transformed completely. Now I carried the weight of responsibility, of leadership, of dreams made manifest. It was a heavier weight in some ways, but it was also the weight of fulfillment, of purpose achieved. As we drove through the Chicago streets toward our apartment, Carol's engagement ring caught the light from street lamps and dashboard displays, a constant reminder of how far we had traveled together. In a few months, it would be joined by a wedding band, and she would become my wife in the space where I had learned that I was capable of achieving anything I was willing to work for. The jewelry store where Victoria had mocked my ambitions felt like a lifetime ago. The woman who had stood there, uncertain of her own worth and defensive about her dreams, had been replaced by someone who owned a successful restaurant, was planning a wedding, and had rebuilt a relationship with her sister based on mutual respect rather than old resentments. I had learned to buy real gold. More importantly, I had learned that I was real gold, valuable, precious, worthy of the biggest dreams I could imagine. And this was just the beginning.